In today's topic, we will be covering Lesson 1.3, Healthy Economies, found in our Intro to Business textbook. The goals are to discuss 3 measurements of an economy's health, and to name and describe the 4 phases of a business cycle. 3 measurements used in looking at the health of an economy are 1. Gross domestic product, GDP, 2. Labor productivity, 3. Inflation and deflation. Gross domestic product, GDP, is the total dollar value of all goods and services produced in an economy in 1 year. It is a basic measurement of how an economy is doing. Information is collected from producers, and data is gathered on the value of what is being produced, called output. GDP includes 4 major categories. 1. Consumer spending for food, clothing, and housing. 2. Business spending for buildings, equipment, and supplies. 3. Government spending to pay employees, and to buy supplies and other goods and services. 4. The exports of a country less the imports of the country. If GDP increases each year, that is a sign of good economic health. It means the economy is growing steadily. With GDP growing, there are more jobs and consumer satisfaction is increasing. The measurement of the number of items produced per worker is called productivity. An increase in productivity is an important source of economic growth. Improvements in the quality of capital equipment, worker training, and management techniques can result in greater output from the same number of workers. A sustained increase in the general level of prices for goods and services is called inflation. A controlled, general rate of inflation is one of the goals of governments. A moderate increase in prices and wages is a sign of a healthy, growing economy. Inflation can be a problem if it increases too rapidly. There have been periods of time when our country has had very high rates of inflation. Government, businesses, and individuals continued to increase their spending, and prices continued to rise. Even though wages, the price paid for labor, increase during inflation, prices of goods and services often rise faster, so workers never catch up. Comparing the relative value of wages and prices of 1 year with another is difficult because of inflation. For instance, in the early 1900s, eggs cost 14 cents per dozen, sugar cost 4 cents per pound, and coffee was only 15 cents per pound. Sound good? Well, at the same time, the average worker in our country earned 20 cents per hour, so the buying power of wages was low. The opposite of inflation is deflation. Deflation is a sustained decrease in the general level of prices for goods and services. It usually occurs during a period when the economy is not doing well and workers are being laid off. Prices of products decrease, but people have less money to buy them. The most notable deflationary period in our country was during the Great Depression of the 1930s. Between 1929 and 1933, prices dropped about 25%. But people definitely were not better off. They could not afford to buy things even at the much lower prices. When people talk about the economy, they speak about good times and bad times. They discuss prices, new businesses, and new job creation. They also discuss businesses that close and jobs that are lost. Changes in the economy impact people's lives. Over the decades, economists have learned that an economy has ups and downs, good times and bad. The movement of the economy from one condition to another and back again is called a business cycle. Business cycles are the recurring ups and downs of GDP. Business cycles have 4 phases: prosperity, recession, depression, and recovery. Prosperity. At the high point of the business cycle, consumers enjoy prosperity. Prosperity is the phase where most people who want to work are employed and businesses produce goods and services in record numbers. Wages are good. The demand for goods and services is high. People are optimistic about the economy and feel good about themselves. Prosperity does not go on forever, however. Eventually the economy cools off and activity slows down. Recession. An economy slowing down signals a recession. Recession is a phase of the business cycle where demand for goods and services begins to decrease, production decreases, unemployment begins to increase, and GDP growth slows down. This phase often means a decrease in sales for expensive goods, such as automobiles. When automobile companies cut back on production, businesses that supply steel, fabrics, and other goods needed in producing automobiles are affected. This ripple effect often causes smaller supply firms to go out of business. A decrease in the use of economic resources, and a lower demand for goods and services signal this phase of the business cycle. Depression. What is it about a recession that makes houses difficult to sell? If a recession gets worse and spreads throughout the economy, the result is depression. Depression is a phase of the business cycle marked by a prolonged period of unemployment, weak sales of goods and services, and business failures. GDP falls rapidly during a depression. During the Great Depression of the early 1930s, the unemployment rate reached 25%. Many people could not afford to provide for even their basic needs. Clothing and food were given out in red lines at churches and charitable organizations. Depression described the emotional mood of the people as well. Recovery. A welcome phase of the business cycle is known as recovery. Recovery is the phase in which unemployment begins to decrease, demand for goods and services begins to increase, and GDP begins to rise again. People are employed once again, and they buy more goods and services. When businesses begin to meet the increasing demand for their products, they hire more workers. More wages being earned increases demand for goods and services. Recovery leads an economy into the most welcome business cycle, prosperity.